technological service cooperative. Let's move on to the second lecture. It's about the importance of good patterns for public spaces in urban areas. Manuel Madrid is our speaker. He's responsible for product testing in gvSIG Association. And Mr. Klaus, who, he couldn't make it today. He's well experienced in gvSIG, and we will have him on video later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, everybody. As Jorge mentioned, it was foreseen that this presentation was given by John Klaus, the youngest in the room. You will remember him as the Ministry of Industry and Trade in the first mandate of Zapatero, or as the mayor of Barcelona. He is managing personally the project, and we are participating in it, and I'll try to explain it not as well as he could do that, but we're going to do that anyway. I would like to say that Johan Klaus is the executive director of UN Habitat, ONU Habitat, so I'm going to explain what is UN Habitat. This is an agency of the United Nations for human settlements. The main objective is to promote the development of sustainable settlements. They are working in development and urban management, in sewage and infrastructures, social inclusion, information and monitorization, environment and climate change, management of risk and natural disasters. The objective has to do with the first of the areas of work, which is the development and urban management, and the aim is to help the governments to implement policies in order to improve the quality of life of the people living in cities or in any human settlement. The objective tries to show the influence of the urban structure, the structure of the streets, the width, the distance between crossings, all those parameters that define the geometry of the urban structure, and how that has an impact on the development of the cities. It is well known that that has an influence in the livability of the city, in the economic prosperity, pollution, access to basic services, inequality, sustainability. We know that there is an influence, but we do not know up to which extent. So we are trying to measure the impact of the different types of infrastructure and the different types of streets. And then we have established a project in order to study. This is a research project that tries to identify the structural patterns, the urban structural patterns in different cities all over the world. After, we will compile social and economical indicators of those same cities, which are analyzed at the level of structures, access to basic services, education, healthcare, employment level, resistance to natural disasters, and safety. Probably we'll try to compile much more. Once we have identified the structure, then we'll have to establish correlations in order to be able to measure the impact of a good planning or a bad planning in the cities. Based on those conclusions, the ultimate aim of Habitat is to write the necessary recommendations, and will ask the government, in this case local government, to implement those directives. In December 2012, UN Habitat and the gvSIG Association signed an agreement in order to develop a pilot project, which is the study of the proportion of space devoted to streets in 30 different cities. One of the most important things is which portion of the space is devoted to public space, to streets and public spaces. After the presentation, we will see a video that has been sent by Joan Close, in which he explains the importance of the public space in the city. Based on this, the first conclusions have been extracted, which have been published by UN Habitat as a working paper, and that can be downloaded from the UN Habitat webpage. And now we're going to speak about the methodology and results, which is a study of the importance of the space used in streets in 30 different cities. The parameters used were the total surface of a study, the total area of streets, the ratio of space used in streets, the total length of the streets, density of streets, the average width of a street, and the total number of intersections. The departure data were based in the cartography of OpenStreetMap, which has a good coverage, especially in developed countries. The highways layer, for those of you who know this mapping for software, we choose a GRASS algorithm in order to do things like reprojection, geoprocessing, and the calculation of distances and surfaces. We are also using the GeoFabric comparator that allows us to compare different data, and that was used in order to assess the cartography, because not all cities had the same level of update, and we had to withdraw from a few of them. And also Google Earth in order to measure the width of the streets. Regarding the selection of the cities, there are two criteria. All the streets should be represented, and there should be cities representing the different types of urban development, of urban planning. We have cities with better or worse planning, and in the less developed countries, usually the planning is worse. We wanted to have a heterogeneous set of cities in order to draw conclusions regarding the differences between them. UN Habitat sent us an initial list of 100 cities, and we were discarding those which presented zones which were not updated or were incomplete. Based on that, we made the list for 30 cities. And this is the comparator of GeoFabric. And here we are comparing OpenStreetMap up left, and then two ortho photos from Google. That allows us to know the quality regarding the update of OpenStreetMap, which was the one we wanted to use. Here, this is a neighborhood in New Delhi, where in this case, we see that in the orthophoto there is cartography which is not done. In practice, the whole neighborhood, so cities presenting this type of deficiency were discarded. The list of cities is the one that you see here. So we have representations of all continents and countries, developed countries and non-developed countries. Regarding the study area, basically we have defined two areas. We have done the study and the process for two areas. A central area, which usually is the hardcore of the cities of approximately 100 square kilometers, that allows us the comparison between cities, because the metropolitan area, which is the rest of the city, is much more heterogeneous between the different cities. But the core, 100 square kilometers in the central area, approx is comparable. A very important thing is the estimation of width, street widths. So we are calculating the ratio which is used for streets in each city. And for this, the data that we need is the width of the streets. We cannot measure the width of all the streets in every city. So then we did an estimate which is independent for each city and each type of a street in each city. I'm referring to the type of cities which are considered in the open street map, like this one: motorway, primary, secondary, tertiary. We did random measurements all over the city, and then we were extracting an average width for the streets of the city. We were including this in the attributes table, and in order to generate the buffer with this, we have the polygon which defines the surface which is used in the streets. Here is Nairobi, the different types of streets. Here we have three types of streets, and then we, after calculating this average width and prepare the buffer, this is the result. Each street has an independent width. And regarding geoprocesses which have been used, we have the buffer, variable width buffer, in order to calculate the total area of the streets. V-clean from grass. We use this because we detected that not all the cities are digitalized in the same way. Some are better than others. Some crossings were not generated. So then we had to transfer this process previously in order to extract the intersections, the nodes, in order to calculate all those crossings, and then the cut in order to adjust all the results of the geoprocesses to the areas of the city. Now we are going to results. These are the results regarding the ratio of a space which is used in a street. This is included in the paper which is posted in the web of UN Habitat. Here we have the need for intersections. Regarding the proportion of a space, the first thing which is extracted from the study is the high disparity that exists between the cities having less proportion and those having a higher proportion. As we see here, the city having a greater proportion is Manhattan. We study as if it could be a city, and the worst is Bangkok. There are other two conclusions that we can extract. The upper third of this page is coincident, is matching cities with good planning, all planning, and then we already see a difference between different types of planning. The different intersection, even more disparity. Bangui is the city that has less density of intersection. In Asian cities, we have some cities which can be over Manhattan even, and other conclusions is that the first third corresponds either to cities having a large old city, what introduces a distortion in the study, which is that historical cities, especially from Middle Ages, have a great number of intersections, or these are cities having an urbanism which is marked by local culture. In the lower third, we have two different features. The models, the city models with planning, modern planning, like Abuja, Brasilia, and even Chandigarh. These cities were designed thinking that the car was the means to move around the city, and there are great boulevards and avenues, and they have low level of intersections. It's not due to lack of planning, but due to a planning which we could say is not the optimal one. And in the lower third, we also have cities with deficient planning. And I'm going to talk about the future steps because this is a pilot project which objective UN. And the objective of UN Habitat is to prove with objective data, and this is a pilot project for 30 cities. The first thing we should know is that perhaps 30 cities is not much. We should increase the number of cities in order to draw more serious conclusions. Improving the methodology for the calculation of intersections, compile the social and economical indicators that have been mentioned, because this project is only studying the urban structure, and find some more correlates, and then publish the result. To finish with, I'm going to show you the video in which John Close says hello to us and tells us about the...
I would like to congratulate all the people here gathered in Valencia to analyze the future of technology information in addressing the main needs of our society. We appreciate very much from UN Habitat your efforts, and we have collaborated with a team here in Valencia in the School of Engineering on the use of open street maps sources to measure one of the main and the most important variable that is present in cities, in urban areas, and that is the quality and the quantity of public space. Public space, mainly the street space, and also the rest of the open space, it's a real basic constituent of a good urbanized city. We have analyzed different parts of the world, and we have analyzed different urban forms and how much of each urban form guarantees the public space. For example, in favelas or in slums or in informal neighborhoods, we have found that nearly, the majority of them, they have not more than 2 to 3% of the land allocated to the pathways and to the open and communication areas. But in well-planned cities, the percentage of land allocated to the street can reach to 30–35% of the total land. And this is a very important feature of what constitutes a good urbanization. Every plot in a well-planned city needs to have direct access to the public space, to the street or to open spaces. This is one of the basic elements of proper urbanization. Curiously enough, there's not a standard measure of this such an important variable. And we are very pleased that using these ready accessible technologies, we can elaborate and we can provide with the mayors with a cheap tool that can measure this basic component of urbanization. I think that this way, this path of research and study, it's a fundamental one in order to address the future of urbanization. You know that today 50% of the world population is already urban, and that in the UN we expect that 70% of the world population is going to be urban in the next 20 to 30 years. That requires a huge process of urbanization, nearly doubling the urban population in the next 30 years. And to have this kind of tools ready, accessible and affordable in the developing world for mayors and for policy makers, for urban planners, is a fantastic contribution of your new technologies to this pursuit. Thank you very much.